Hello everybody, my name's Zahir and I want to welcome you all to my channel Plants and Paints. Now, I haven't done an introduction into my channel for a while, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to give a brief description into my channel before we start on today's video. So generally what I do here on Plants and Paints is I focus on individual plants every time I do a video. So rather than focusing on a genus, I will do it care and maintenance requirements plus a little introduction into an individual plant. I think a lot of people generally, when they're searching care requirements for a particular plant, they like to search for that actual plant that they want their care requirements for, rather than looking through it as a genus. So hence the reason I've decided to make videos concerning individual plants rather than them as a genus. So as I mentioned, my name's Zahir, this is Plants and Paints, and today we're going to be talking about the Philodendron Billietiae, or rather the Verigated Philodendron Billietiae today. Now the reason I've mentioned both names is because generally the care requirements for the Verigated Billietiae and just your standard Billietiae are no different. They're exactly the same plant. The only difference in the plant is the actual variegation itself. Now, throughout the video, I'm just going to speak about the care and maintenance requirements as the plant, for the plant as a whole. So it's not going to be any different in any particular way. There's no way that you can improve variegation on the plant or anything like that. It is to do with the genes of the plant, and at the end of the video, the last paragraph that I will talk about will actually be to do with variegation in plants. So just to give you a little description as to how that occurs and why you end up with plants like this. And for those of you who are not aware, this would be your standard leaf. So this is a standard leaf of the Billietiae, and I'm sure a lot of you agree that this is an absolutely stunning specimen. This particular leaf here is over 50 centimeters long, and this leaf here has the variegation on it. So you've got the blotchy patterned marks on there. That is what is considered to be the variegation on this plant. Now, before I actually get started, I just want to mention that this plant actually belongs to one of my customers now. I put this up for auction recently on eBay, and a customer actually won this. So this is going to be the last day that I have this plant with me. So I thought I would do the care and maintenance on this particular plant before I actually ship it out. It is a plant that is very, very high up on my wish list, if not at the top, but I wanted to get one with variegation on every leaf of the plant, so that I knew that it was a variegation in the genes, so that it's something that is going to be reproduced on a high rate rather than something that is just sporadic. So I do actually have something of my own on the way. I'm really looking forward to it arriving, but as I mentioned, this actually belongs to one of my customers and will be shipped out tomorrow. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start with a little general introduction into the plant, and I'm going to talk a little bit about when you're buying a Billietiae, what to expect, because the type of plant it is, you're generally going to find a lot of cuttings available in the trade, and a lot of the time people will sell those as new cuttings to you, and they'll actually come with aerial roots. So I've come across situations where customers have got quite worried about the fact that it doesn't have the healthy rooting system that the Philodendron Billietiae is known for, and I just want to give a brief description into that. So the Philodendron Billietiae itself is native to French Guiana. It can be found growing natively in the rainforests bordering Brazil all the way to Costa Rica. It's a type of climbing plant which can reach absolutely huge proportions. I mean, from what I understand, the leaves themselves can get anywhere from 3 to 4 foot long and about a foot to a foot and a half in width as well, which, you know, I'm sure you'll agree that is a huge leaf for something that is, you know, producing itself like that. It's absolutely beautiful as well. I do love the Billietiae itself. Such a nice plant, and can often be found. So the Billietiae can often be found attached to trees and growing up towards the canopies in the rainforest that it grows. Now, whilst it's growing, because it's a vining type of plant, it will actually produce aerial roots which it will use to latch onto its surroundings while those aerial roots are making their way down towards the forest floor for them to submerge themselves in the soil. So when purchasing a Philodendron Billietiae, you're often going to find that you're going to be purchasing a cutting. So if you were to remove that Philodendron Billietiae from its potting medium, you'll probably find that it doesn't have a base like you would naturally see on a plant where the roots are coming out of the base. A lot of the time what you're actually going to find is that Philodendron Billietiae that you've bought has actually come from a cutting of some sort. So with the cutting, what's actually going to happen is when they take the cutting, they're going to take that cutting with aerial roots attached to it, and those aerial roots will then become your roots for your plant. So when you're receiving the plant, the roots will look quite brown, and I know that people can get quite worried when they see brown roots and quite twiggy looking roots, but on the Philodendron Billietiae, if they're the aerial roots that are going to produce the actual roots for the plant, then that is generally what you're going to get. It's going to be very similar to, let's say, a Monstera plant, how a Monstera plant produces its aerial roots. Unfortunately, I don't have any aerial roots to show you that are above the soil level on this, because this plant also has been received as a cutting with aerial roots on it, but those aerial roots will now start to produce roots that are naturally suited to growing within a soil environment. So if you're familiar with how roots grow on a Monstera, as the Monstera is growing up, you've got the aerial roots which come out from the nodes on the plant. So where you've got your node where the leaf is produced on the plant, you also get aerial roots that are being produced from there. So with the Philodendron Billietiae, it's exactly the same. So where you've got the node where it's due to produce its new leaf, it will also produce aerial roots there to use as things like anchorage points, and if it needs to source extra nutrient, it will produce extra aerial roots so that it can, for instance, suck moisture out of the atmosphere, or the tree that it may be living on or in has puddles of water, so it may produce aerial roots to get to that, because the roots there will move themselves around. So they might wrap themselves around trees, and you know, they make their way down towards the floor of the rainforest. So they do actually move in a fashion where it seems like there's some sense to it, if you understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that plants are thinking as such, but they sort of do know what to do with their roots. So they will use them as anchor points, or they will face them down towards the bottom of the rainforest so that they get to bury those roots in the soil, which will then turn into a normal rooting system that you're generally used to seeing on a plant, with the small fibrous roots rather than the twiggy brown aerial root. So that's my general introduction into the Philodendron Billietiae. I hope that, you know, seeing this is satisfying some people's curiosities, because I did look on the internet and I didn't really see any videos about the Philodendron Billietiae, the variegated variety, and it's such a popular plant. Although they do fetch such a hefty price tag, it is such a popular plant. I'm surprised that there isn't more videos available on the internet, and I definitely didn't come across a care and maintenance video that was focused on the variegated variety, although I can see for obvious reasons why. But at the same time, I didn't come across many videos for the Billietiae in general anyway. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to lighting requirements for this plant. So The Philodendron Billietiae likes bright but indirect lighting conditions, so filtered lighting would be ideal as long as you don't keep this in like a southern exposure. So a south facing window, you're going to find that the plant is going to be happy and it will thrive. You know, if you're going to put it in a south facing window, then you can expect it to get burned leaves and you can expect it to become quite distressed, and you probably could end up killing the plant like that. So keep it in as filtered light as possible. So just as a description of filtered light, if you do keep your plants in a room that has a south facing window and that is your preferred room to keep your plants, or your plants seem to do the best there and you're starting to keep plants that need filtered light, then just having something like a net curtain up covering that window is filtering that light enough. So obviously don't keep the plant right next to the window. If you've got a south facing window, do keep it a distance away, but you will have to use a net curtain to filter that light through, because that will break up the rays of the sun, which are the things that will actually end up burning the leaves of the plant. So whilst growing in indirect light, the Billietiae will produce vibrant green leaves and bright orange, maturing to a burnt orange stem, which together they look absolutely stunning. I'm sure you can see it from there, but you know, these will start a very bright orange, and then eventually as they mature, just like these ones are, they start to turn a very burnt orange color. And you can see, you know, as a contrast to the green, they go together so well. It's such a stunning combination of color. You know, it is quite shocking how brilliant Mother Nature works sometimes to produce some of the most staggering plants that you're ever going to see. And I think this is just a great example of that. Generally, when you're looking at a plant stem, you're looking at something that's green. You're very rarely going to see something that's orange, as orange as this is. And you know, being that these are quite actually mature leaves due to the size of them. I do have another Billietiae. What I should have done is I should have pulled that out for the video just to give you a comparison, but because my other Billietiae is very juvenile, the stems on the leaves are very light orange, but as the leaves mature and the stems mature, they get darker in color. And it actually does, as a description, the way that I would describe it is it looks like a burned orange color. But very beautiful combination of colors together. I absolutely love the way that those two go together. So I've given you a general description on lighting there. So as long as you know, are not sticking it in a south facing window and it is getting some light, you'll find that the plant will thrive. As far as lighting conditions for my house, I think generally for aeroids and the kind of plants that live in the rainforest environment, I have the perfect conditions because I have a north facing window, and because generally they're under a canopy, they're getting very filtered light anyway. And what I've found is that aeroids seem to really thrive around my north facing window. There are a couple of other reasons that help them to thrive, but as the kind of plants that I'm keeping are starting to become more and more aeroid orientated, I've noticed that they are generally very, very happy with the light that is being produced through my window for them. So if you have a north facing window, I really can't recommend it enough for somewhere for you to keep your plants in close proximity of. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk a little bit about potting mix. Now there's not much to the potting mix, so it is going to be generally quite a brief description of that. So the Philodendron Billietiae enjoys a well draining but moist, rich organic potting mix. So the ideal potting mix for this would be a well draining, good quality potting soil, some orchid bark potting mix, some perlite and some sphagnum moss. Now what that will do, it will just ensure that it's a well draining potting mix, but also that it's able to retain an even level of moisture without being waterlogged. Now that's quite important, because you don't want to create an environment for the Philodendron Billietiae where the potting medium is soggy or waterlogged. They don't like that sort of environment, so it has to be very well draining, and that combination of potting mix there will ensure that you don't get waterlogged substrate for your plant, and it will make sure that it's very well draining, so as you're watering it will just, you know, it will wet the potting mix. It's quite an airy potting mix, so there's not going to be anywhere for it to get the water to gather up, and it will drain quite freely out of the pot. So that's your general introduction into the potting mix for this plant. So what we're going to do now, as I've started talking about watering the plant and the moisture level that's required in the potting mix, naturally I think I should just move on to watering now. So when watering the Philodendron Billietiae, there are several ways that you can do it. Now, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware from my previous videos, I've mentioned that I use filtered water for all of my plants. So what I will do, I will get a water filter jug, I will filter that water, I will then leave that water out for a further 24 hours. That gives the water the opportunity to rid itself of any bonded contaminants that it's able to do so through evaporation. Being that you're putting it through a filter, and a filter jug will filter that water within the space of a couple of minutes, I think more for my own mental purpose, I find it difficult to believe that it can remove everything that it says it can within that such a short period of time. Things like chlorine and stuff like that, although I would like to believe that manufacturers wouldn't lie to us, but I have my reservations. So I will, like I said, I'll leave that water out for a 24-hour period, so that anything that is left in that water that is able to be removed from the water through evaporation, I've given it the opportunity to do that. And also what I'm doing is I'm giving the water the opportunity to get up to room temperature as well, because you don't want to be putting cold water from your tap straight into your plants, being that their soil is now at room temperature or around room temperature, because you can actually send the roots into shock, which can sometimes kill your plant. Not very frequently, but it can definitely slow and stunt growth, stop it producing new leaves, and, you know, have some adverse effects on the plant, like curly leaves are emerging and things like that. So other things you can do is you can use rainwater. So if you've got a rain butt outside, you can collect rainwater, and you can use rainwater to filter your plants. That's a more natural approach, and the plants absolutely love it. It's full of nutrients, naturally occurring nutrients, so that's a good approach to use. And you can also use bottled mineral water full of essential minerals for the plant, so another great approach. Or you could even use demineralized water, but when using demineralized water, if it's a long-term thing and you're doing that consistently, then I would advise either every now and then add a drop or two fertilizer to that water, or just make sure that at least once a year you're changing the top 1 to 2 inches of soil, so that you're adding a new source of nutrient into that plant's environment, because everything is very localized in a pot. Things can run out within a particular amount of time, so you just want to make sure that you're giving that plant its requirements as far as nutrient is concerned. So I think I've talked enough about watering now. In fact, I will mention one more thing. When you are watering your plant, if you have a drip tray at the bottom, I did briefly touch on this in the potting mix section, but if you have a drip tray on the bottom of your pot and you're watering this plant, do not let it sit in water that is gathering in the drip tray. The whole idea behind having a well draining soil is that once that soil is saturated enough, it will get rid of the excess, and you don't want to leave that sitting in your drip tray, because then it will soak back up into the soil will become oversaturated, and you'll end up with a very soggy and boggy potting mix for the plant, which the plant is not going to like at all. So when you're watering, try and get used to a situation where you know how much water on average you're putting into the plant before it starts draining out. And if it's a new part of your watering regime, get used to actually removing any runoff water from the plant, as to not let it sit in a puddle. This plant doesn't like soggy feet at all. Okay, so I've talked enough there about watering. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move on to humidity now. Now, due to the fact that the Philodendron Billietiae is a tropical plant, it actually likes high levels of humidity. So it will benefit from a high humid environment, and this will promote healthy and lush growth. So the philodendron will benefit from regular misting. It will benefit from a humidifier. These are things that will all raise the humidity for you. Now, I understand that not every plant keeper has something like a humidifier, but I'm pretty sure anyone is, you know, able to get themselves a spray bottle or a misting bottle. You know, you can go to your local shop and you can probably pick one up for 99 pence. They're very inexpensive. Now, other things you can do, so with the humidifier running, I will mist my plants every day. So when I get up in the morning, once I've got myself ready for work, I'll give all my plants a mist before I leave for the day. And then in the afternoon when I come home, they will get a further misting again. As well as the humidifier running 24 hours a day. So I generally keep my humidity very, very high in my house. Other things you can do to raise the humidity around your plants is you can get yourself a plant tray. You can fill that plant tray with pebbles, and then you can half fill that plant tray with water. Just making sure that the water is only halfway up to the level of the pebbles. And then what you can do is you can put your plant pots on top of that plant tray, and as the water evaporates, it will naturally create a humid environment around the plants. So other things you can do is you can get little water vessels, and you can pop them around your plant pots, so you can have little water vessels here and there, and that will also evaporate, causing a natural humidity around the plant for you. Another thing you can do is you can get little seashells, and you can put them in the top of the pot. So every time you're watering your plant, those seashells are collecting reservoirs of water, and also it helps to keep bugs and stuff out of your potting mix as well, because it's, in effect, it's like putting a layer of stones on top, because you're blocking that top layer out from things being able to get in. So you could scatter a whole bunch of shells on top of there, and every time you water, those shells will collect little reservoirs of water, and throughout a particular period of time, that water will evaporate around the plant. It will be also very localized to the plant, and it will create a natural humidity for that plant for you. So although I've mentioned quite a lot about humidity there, I just want to point out that the Philodendron Billietiae is a very, very easy plant to care for. Now, generally in a home, your humidity levels are around 50%. So, you know, if you've got a window open in another room and your house generally stays above 15 degrees, then the humidity level is going to be around about 50% in your home anyway. And 50% humidity for a plant like this, from 40% upwards, is more than adequate for this plant. So you don't necessarily need to have a humidifier. You can choose to do any of the things that I've suggested to you to raise the humidity, or you could just leave it. It will enjoy a misting every now and then. So like I said, 99 pence. If you're going to go and buy yourself one of these plants, they're generally not an inexpensive plant. They can fetch a little bit of money, but you know, if you can go out and buy the plant, you can definitely buy yourself a little misting bottle, even if it's costing you like £1 or something. So generally, if you're new to plant keeping, this is a great plant to start with if you're looking into keeping aeroids. So this plant is good for beginners because of the hardy nature of this plant. So providing you don't keep it in a south facing window, providing you're not over fertilizing it, which I'm going to talk about in a second, providing you've got a well draining potting mix, then this plant generally will look after itself. And it's, like I mentioned, it's very hardy and very easy to look after. Very low maintenance is concerned when looking after this plant, so it's great for a beginner to start with. So any of the things that I mentioned about humidity, you don't necessarily have to do them, although I would recommend it, because replicating a plant's natural environment should be second nature to somebody who enjoys keeping plants, because the way that I think naturally it occurs to me, what can I do to make this plant more comfortable during its stay with me? And I'll generally research its living conditions, and I'll try and replicate that as close as possible. But you know, you've got new plant keepers out there, they're not going into that much depth, they just see something, they think it's nice. And absolutely, if you think this is a nice plant and you want to add one of these to your collections and you're new to plant keeping, don't fear it. It's absolutely fine to add this to your collection, and it's a good plant to actually have in your starting pack. Okay, so what we're going to do now, I've talked about humidity, we're going to move on to fertilizer because I just mentioned it there. So with fertilizing the Philodendron Billietiae, I would suggest to use a balanced liquid fertilizer and fertilize at 1/4 to even under 1/4 of the recommended dose that fertilizer company is recommending. So just as an example, a fertilizer company might say add 10 ml to every litre of water. I would suggest to you, with this particular plant, you're going to be wanting to use about 2.5 ml, even 2 ml per litre of water, if that's what the parameters are telling you. So whatever it is, 1/4 or just under 1/4. This plant is quite sensitive to being over fertilized, so just making sure that you're keeping that dilution rate really low is really quite important. So what you want to do with fertilizer is every 3rd watering, you want to make sure that you add the fertilizer on every 3rd watering. You don't want to be adding it every single time you water the plant, because you definitely will get a build-up of fertilizer if you're doing that. And then what you're also doing by adding it every 3rd watering is you're giving yourself 2 waterings to make sure that if there is any fertilizer left over in the potting medium, that is being diluted down through the water, so it isn't building up around the roots, or the plant isn't trying to take up too much and ending up damaging the plant. So you're diluting that down quite well over that period of watering, so you're actually fertilizing every 3rd watering. Okay, now finally, before we give a brief description to variegation, we're going to talk very briefly about temperature. So the temperature range for the Philodendron Billietiae is quite wide in range, so it can happily tolerate temperatures from 15 all the way up to 30 degrees, and that is quite a huge margin. So hence, going back to what I was saying earlier about this being such an easy plant to keep, pretty much every parameter of keeping this plant has huge boundaries for you. So it just means that, you know, the likeliness of getting something wrong is very slim. So having a temperature range of 15 to 30 degrees pretty much suits any level of plant keepers' knowledge of keeping a plant. I mean, it's such a vast range that on average, your average house temperature, like I mentioned earlier, is probably going to be about 15 degrees plus, and then during the summer periods you're going to get up to like 30 degrees. So you'll probably find that this plant will live happily and thrive throughout the year. So that's a mention of temperature there. So what we're going to do finally is we are going to talk about the variegation on the plant. So the variation in leaf color arises because of a lack of the green pigment, which is called chlorophyll, in some of the plant cells. So the lack of the green pigment, which is called chlorophyll in some of the plant cells, it isn't an adaptation to the environment. So this is nothing to do with the environment that the plant lives in. More so, instead, it's usually the result of a cell mutation, and it can be inherited, which would make it a genetic trait. So for instance, you get plants that are variegated in nature quite readily. So for instance, you get syngoniums that come in all different ranges of colors. You've got things like the caladiums. They come in all ranges of colors, and genetically they are adapted to be a variegated plant. Now the other occurrence is chimeric, which is a random occurrence, so it's not something that you're going to find all the time, which makes it a rarity in nature. And I would suggest that the variegated Billietiae falls into the chimeric range of variegated plants. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that once you've got a variegated Billietiae that it isn't going to produce more variegated leaves. What it more so means is that in nature you're going to find things like this very frequently. This is going to become a normal thing for the plant to do. So the color variations get bigger and bigger and bigger, where the variegated Billietiae, this is the kind of thing in nature you could probably imagine finding this like 1 in 100 plants, even I would suggest more than that. So it's a randomly occurring variegation, so it's not something that's going to happen all the time. So I'm just going to quickly describe that to you again, just so that you've got a clear understanding without me giving the descriptions in there. So variation in leaf color arises because of a lack of the green pigment, which is chlorophyll in some of the plant cells. It isn't an adaptation to the environment, but instead it's usually the result of cell mutation, and it can be inherited, which makes it genetic. The other instance is it can occur randomly, which makes it chimeric. So that is a general description for you there into variegation in plants. I hope that that is sufficient for you. If you do have any questions, more questions about variegation, feel free to ask me any questions about that, but I've pretty much covered everything in the video there. I hope you've enjoyed my video today. I hope you've enjoyed seeing this absolutely stunning plant, which after this video I'm actually going to pack up and get posted out to one of my customers who I know is eagerly waiting for it. It's been a pleasure making another video for you to enjoy today. I hope you've enjoyed my video. If you have, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also, in the comment section, please leave a comment if you've got something you wish to comment on. And if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe. If you are new subscribing, please don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you can get notifications of future content. My name's Zahir, this is Plants and Paints. I hope you like my new t-shirt, which I also forgot to mention. I've been doing some merchandising recently for my shop. For those of you who don't know, I actually sell plants. This is one of the plants I actually sold recently. I have a huge stock on the way. I look forward to making more videos for you in the very near future, and thank you everyone for tuning in. My name's Zahir, this is Plants and Paints, and I'll see you again soon. Take care, bye bye.